Well, Dr. Kimberly Moore, thank you so much for joining us today on myFootpath's podcast leadership series. Dr. Kimberly Moore is the Vice President of Student Affairs and Chief Student Success Officer at Xavier University. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, and wow, Xavier University, you're 5 years away from your bicentennial.
That's right. Lots to look forward to and celebrate, that's for sure. Century.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a great, great history. So we're very excited to have you today and have a conversation about a lot of things. And we always like to start with your personal journey first. And so I always love to learn who were the mentors that helped shape your pathway.
Yeah, when I get this question, it's kind of it's a little bit longer of an answer because I don't have one person or a name that pops into my head that's been along for the journey, but I am very intentional about collecting relationships. And I have deep, meaningful relationships from every phase in my life, going back to elementary school. So I'm just lucky to have just a wonderful group of people that I've carried with me throughout my entire career and that I've learned lessons from and have definitely influenced my leadership style. If I had to name two people, it would probably be my grandmothers. I had two really strong, wonderful role models in my grandmothers, and they were well before their time and broke some barriers well before their time, and certainly showed me what it was like to lead with integrity and ethics and try to role model and think of them as often as I can. So,
Absolutely. And something that I know that you have been kind of a lead point for the institution is, many institutions operate under the idea of if you build it, they will come. And so can you talk to us about how does Xavier make sure programs actually spark connection and belonging rather than just adding more options to the calendar?
yep. I think in student affairs and in higher ed, the tendency is to build something and then let it be for a while because we tend to rely on generational theory and sort of say, okay, well, this has worked year over year, and so it should work again. And maybe we tinker, but we kind of just let programs run. And right before the pandemic, I started to see segmentation in the generations. And a lot of other people did too, but generational theory is not as reliable as it once was. And students' needs, wants, and expectations, and the families' needs, wants, and expectations are far more varied, even in the same cohort and even in the same class. So it's really about tailoring. It's really about customization. And this is the key. It's about co-creation. So you have to be constantly having a flywheel where you're engaged with students, understanding what they need, what they want, and have options and pathways and accessible pathways on and off campus. And so I would say that the quick answer is co-creation, but it's really for tailoring and customization because it's what students expect now as part of the value of the education that they're getting.
Well, and I know before the pandemic, every student was assigned a success coach. So I would love to learn from you, what did the data show you coming out of the pandemic that led to the hub and spoke model with 360-degree care managers?
Yep. So success coaches were a bit of a fad. A lot of institutions felt good that it was sort of the bridge between an academic advisor and and faculty advisors and somebody who really had a broad view. The problem is that a lot of students are confused by that model. They don't know who exactly to go to for what thing. And so it was pretty evident that at an institution our size, with the promises we make to our students, we had to do something different. And ultimately, we decided to go with and design a hub and spoke model where it really is about data-driven practices. So our care managers have a dashboard they go to. They can see which students are surfacing. We've designed it from scratch. We have a lot of pre-enrollment factors, post-enrollment factors, behaviors, a whole formula that helps us understand the right resources for the right student at the right time. And they have one person, a care manager, that reaches out proactively and makes a connection, as opposed to trying to navigate and figure out, where do I go for this? Especially as more first gen students become the college going.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about student success, and retention is a key element to that. And I know that Xavier and yourself have been very intentional about retention and making sure students persist. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools that you've used to really help make sure that students stick,
Mhm.
especially from freshman to sophomore year?
Yeah. I'll just reiterate that it starts with a solid data foundation. And that data foundation doesn't have to be just quantitative or, dashboard, averages, risk factors, that kind of thing. You got to be in conversation and connection and relationship with these students. And that means that you have to really shift culture on a college campus. So culture, data, and then a philosophy and approach for reacting to, relationships, and changing culture, and reacting with intentionality around that data and customizing for that student, right? And so I would say our greatest turnaround, and we've really seen it in our numbers, is that when everybody on the college campus understands that retention isn't the job of one office or department, or student success isn't the job of one office or department, but everybody has a role to play. And it's a shift in mindset to really show up as a student presents themselves to you, show up and get to know that student, know their name, know their story, know what their goals are and what they're trying to achieve. And then you have a relationship, you build trust, and they'll come to you if there's an issue. And then you have to have a network of support designed to respond to that information. And you use the people who are closest, from faculty, staff, and administrators, and you use the people who are closest to that student to help bring them in and connect them to the resources that was customized and designed for them. So it's quite a network, but it starts with data and a culture to respond to the data.
And I love that. And let's expand on the culture side of things for a
Mhm.
minute. And let's talk about that student engagement too. And when you talk about involving students to help design and promote events and
Mhm.
how that's changed participation, and again, getting the students involved, making sure that they feel a part of this. So talk about those on-campus events and really how has that changed, just the overall experience of the student and helping them, I would imagine, achieve student success.
Yeah, the belonging piece of student success, if a student doesn't ultimately, it could be academic reasons why they leave, it could be financial reasons why they leave. And you can design some things to address those two pieces. But at the end of the day, if a student just isn't feeling connected and isn't feeling a sense of belonging, they're not going to feel affinity for the institution and they will leave, right? And so the belonging piece is trickier than some of the other pieces. And you've got to have an offering, a wide offering to help students. What I said earlier about not all students want the same things, need the same things. So it's that customized approach to student engagement as well. And if you invite them in, they 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 become influencers, right? I mean, we really are in an influencer environment with this particular generation of students. They understand and need convenience, there is such a challenge, you know, drawing a student out and away from their phones and their screens because it's comfortable, right? And it's right there. Like they can have food delivered to their residence hall room. They can have, entertainment at the push of a button, and they're comfortable. They don't have to go out in the cold here. Um, right now it's quite cold. They don't have to go out of their they don't have to leave their residence hall room or their off-campus apartment or whatever their living circumstances. But you have to create something that is going to counteract and give them the motivation to come up and out and engage and connect and have real life interactions with their peers and to make memories and to help them connect and belong at a place. And you need a series of those interactions, and they should be positive and exciting. And so when we co-create with students, we do use this influencer model. We leverage social media. We You can't just come up with an idea and then bring it to a student board. That's sort of the old model, a programming board, right? That is student run, but you can't come up with the idea and then bring it to them and expect them to buy in. It's about the origin of the idea, getting them planned, part of the planning process, and there's more buy-in, and then they use their social networks and their influence to encourage people to come out and join them. That has worked. Those are our most successful experiences for our students. And then I'll just add, the other thing that we have shifted is we have shifted away from sort of like, hey, if your department's doing something and your department's doing something and Res Life is doing something and student involvement, or even graduate, students and graduate student support. And then there's just a whole bunch of things that people can kind of pick from out there. We have opted for being very intentional that the connection and the community building is happening at least on the residential side in the residence halls, more so than just like this calendar, this if you build it, they will come sort of thing. But the community and intentionality is happening in the residence life. Then we're building to more broad-based community-wide experiences. So it's about building a foundation of connection, giving a student an opportunity to have a little crew and meet a few people, and then grow that by going to shared experiences and making memories together, instead of just sort of this wild, wild west, figure out what fits for you.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. And especially I can imagine too, as freshmen coming in, that traditional age student that's a freshman on campus,
Mhm.
that can be pretty nerve-wracking. If you're trying to build your community of friends and people that you get to know and just building a comfort level on campus, that's not always easy. And so from my estimation and just in my experience too, it's so critical starting freshman year to make sure that, hey, you're engaged, but you really feel like you are part of the community on campus, and then you can start talking about the value of a degree and aligning the value with the program, which is obviously very important as well. But yeah, from my estimation, I think it starts with that comfort level in yourself and your surroundings.
Absolutely. And I think you're seeing the preparedness and readiness of college students, traditional age college students, and even this is impacting even graduate students and adult learners. It's all the way through the pipeline that you are seeing a very different type of readiness and preparedness from students. And what they're expecting is very different than what used to work. And so some students are ready to take risks and ready to kind of bridge the gap of discomfort right away. That's just how they were built, that whatever their experiences were readied them and prepared them in a way where they're willing to do that. But other students are really not. And it is a very uncomfortable time. Change is hard. It's getting harder as we get more and more dependent on technology to do our connections for us. So braving live spaces. So you have to have different size access points for students to engage and find even just one other person. They get courage as they connect with even just one other person. And so it really is customizing access points and pathways for engagement and ultimately belonging for students.
Yeah, and I love, what you had just touched upon are creating the multiple pathways
Mhm.
for students and making sure that you have, because each student is different. And to your point, you have a traditional age student that's, seeking that bachelor's degree versus a graduate student versus an adult learner. So can you talk a little bit about the multiple pathways that are needed and have been created by you and Xavier to really help connect and engage? Because to your point, the pathways are different. It's not a one size fit all, especially when you're talking about different ages and different degree pursuits.
That's right. So one thing that I think is unique about Xavier is that we are rooted in our mission, and a big part of being part of the Jesuit tradition is this idea of accompaniment and walking with students. So whether you're entering as an adult learner, getting a bachelor's degree or a certification, or whether you're a grad student or whether you're a residential undergrad or even a commuter, it is about us having the people at the gateway ready to welcome the students into their programs and into their spaces, even for like we have make sure that we have commuter lounge, commuter spaces, a full-time staff and peer mentors in the commuter lounge so that we know that students who commute to campus have a place and a space on campus and a community, right? We train all of our residence life staff to start. You got to know a student's name. And if you know their name, you can start to begin to know their story. And if you know their story, you can make connections. And then you become a resource of support. You can share all the resources we have. Same thing for graduate students, same thing for our adult learners. For us at Xavier, we have the right size and ability and network of support that starts with welcoming and then continues with accompaniment.
Yeah, and as far as the size of the institution, right around 5,500 students, 6,000, is
Yep.
that
Including our grad population. Yep.
okay? Talk about how that is an advantage for you all to make it intimate.
Yes. So the size, of course, I returned and came to Xavier because I wanted to be back in the Jesuit network. Um, I was at much bigger institutions prior to being at Xavier. And I was drawn to the size because, you can have a philosophy of being student-centered. And you can make a lot of promises about what that means for the context of the institution. But the wonderful thing about Xavier is that we can actually convert on that promise and really create community dynamic through shared values. That's a big part of it. But I think the size is a real advantage because we can not only make promises and statements about meeting what students want and need, which in this loneliness epidemic that we hear about is ultimately connection. And then ultimately, if you make connection, you find community, you feel belonging, you stay, you matriculate, you ultimately achieve your goals, right? I think our size is really makes it believable and because it is possible, right? I think that's the key. It's hard to believe you can do that at scale once you start getting bigger.
Sure, sure. So let's talk a little bit about career readiness. And you all are based in Cincinnati, a
Mhm.
thriving big city that has strong employers. And I don't want to just single out Cincinnati. I'm sure you have other employers in the
Sure.
broader region that align with students in their degrees. Can you talk a little bit about that workforce development and the career readiness and just the work that you're doing with employers?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know the importance of making a degree matter. We understand that you begin with the end in mind. Each student comes in and carries their particular set of goals of why they're coming back why they're starting or why they're coming back if they're adult learners, right? It's to somehow advantage them or prepare them for their post-certificate or post-degree life, right? And so we understand the practical preparation, right? We talk about skill development and understanding what your first destination or next destination might be after you achieve your degree or you achieve the goals that you've set out. And we have all of those programs in place. We have those support systems. We have the networks. We have a significant alumni network that it's not just in Cincinnati. We are a national institution. And so we have relationships quite broadly. And so it's about making sure students are prepared to take advantage of the moments and the opportunities that come their way because they've achieved something. So they're not only ready to show up in the workplace with the right skills, and the right knowledge. But for us, it's deeper than that. And it's about vocational discernment while you're here. And so, what questions are we putting in front of our students to gnaw on and really reflect and discern the right answer about their purpose, right? Our president talks about preparing students for bigger lives. So whether that means you're a traditional student and just starting out, or whether you're an adult learner coming back to add certificates or degrees, whatever it might be, to like level up your career. It's really about making sure that you've asked the big questions to live a bigger life so that you're not wasting your time or spinning your wheels, but you're maximizing this once in a lifetime opportunity to go and what we say is set the world on fire, make change, be the difference in your communities well after you leave Xavier. But of course, we hope students and folks never really leave Xavier, right?
Well, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's great. And I love hearing the fact that it's not just point A, point B, get your job and go from there. I mean, this is a really all-encompassing, lifelong learning atmosphere, platform, and environment that Xavier is promoting and living out on a day-to-day basis, which is great.
Yeah, it's about going deeper, really.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So as if you can, look at your crystal ball and look ahead at 10 years, where do you see Xavier?
I think we are thriving in a very complex, disrupted industry. We are doing really hard work right now to change, to adapt, but not change from who we are, right? It's to respond to the externalities. I've been in the industry for almost 25 years. I don't remember a more disruptive time and as many externalities, right? I think higher ed institutions have always struggled with sort of their own internal challenges, but this is about things that we can't necessarily control. And so I think we are doing the hard work right now to transform systems, to transform culture, to root all change in who we are and our mission that you mentioned is almost 200 years old. And so not deviating from who we are and what we stand for, but preparing for the externalities that are certainly going to continue to disrupt the industry. So
Well, excellent. Well, Dr. Kimberly Moore, this has been great. Thank you
thank
so
you.
much for your thought
It's been fun.
leadership. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's been fun.
Absolutely.